Some reviews on the Doctor Who ratings guide, the DWRG, which are more positive than mine on Colony in Space, so let's hear some alternate perspective. O&A Stinger on the 22nd of the 12th, 98. Continuing with my Doctor Who revival, I blew the dust off my 13-year-old recorded copy of Colony in Space and viewed it for the first time in ages. Although some of the props and sets have aged rather badly, this is still a rather good story, which stands up well to the other stories in the excellent Season 8. The story's writing is credited to Malcolm Hulke, but I wouldn't be surprised if Robert Holmes had a hand in it as well, as it contains features of both men's penmanship. The xenomorphic aliens in Colony are not stereotypical, malevolent enemies, but rather an independent race with an agenda of their own, a hallmark of Hulke's scripts. Instead, the enemies of the human colonists are their fellow Earthmen, in this case the Interplanetary Mining Corporation, and their very Holmes-esque corporate greed. The idea of an ancient race all but destroyed by a superweapon of their own making in their attempts to see that no other race make use of it again is an interesting story in and of itself, but throw into that the appearance of the Master and makings of a classic Doctor Who saga are complete. As the second to last story in the season, as the season in which the Master appeared in every story, his appearance in Colony as well cannot be truly said to be a surprise, but as he didn't show up until halfway through, the story was given room to develop in its own right. The wonderfully atmospheric first episode is also a treat, with the howling wind outside the colonists' hut and the mysterious nighttime attacks. Once you suspend your disbelief over the plasticky sets and quirky costumes, Colony in Space is a highly entertaining early chapter in the great Doctor Who saga, 7 out of 10. There you go. Stuart Gutteridge on the 7th of the 7th, 99, says, chiefly remembered as being the first non-Earth-based adventure for John Pertwee's third Doctor, Colony in Space has a lot going for it. Unfortunately, however, it is not without its bad points. Visually, it isn't very interesting. The series may have been able to get away with making quarries look like alien planets, most notably in the Savages, but it is all too obvious that the location is just this, a quarry. The tale also lacks any real dramatic incidents to give it a bit of life, and it subsequently comes across as being somewhat dull. Even the inclusion of the Master doesn't come as any surprise, despite him not appearing until the 4th episode, given that he was in the previous tales of the season. On the plus side, there are some interesting ideas and well-drawn characters, typical from the pen of Malcolm Hulke. Although they are certainly not up to the standards of those from Doctor Who and the Silurians, the conflict between the colonists and IMC is the main storyline, and John Pertwee is well suited in the role of mediator, ably assisted by Katie Manning's Joe Grant. This is probably just as well, as the native primitives pose some threat, particularly during the nighttime scenes. The Guardian is less imposing due largely to his overall appearance. Roger Delgado is excellent in the somewhat unnecessary role of the Master and makes up for any shortcomings. Colony in Space may not have been the best story to see the third Doctor away from Earth. It may not be a particularly exciting adventure, but it is certainly enjoyable, if not for all the right reasons. Now I'll read out this. Hulke should have been a priest, from Mike Jenkins on the 24th of the 2nd, 02. Hulke should be a priest. Like all of his other stories, with the exception of the War Games, which is really Dick's story, there is too much moralizing. Like Doctor Who and the Silurians, there is overacting and dialogue repetition. Once again, the central concept is a saving grace, but there isn't just padding like his previous story. There are a number of plot holes. The Master just happened to know what was going on and be in the Adjudicator's vicinity. He just happened to know about the ancient civilization's doomsday weapon. All this aside, the IMC and the Primitives' history are all great concepts, but the thing that keeps this story from plummeting into the below average is Roger Delgado himself, and particularly the interplay of Pertwee. Unfortunately, Joe is mostly forgotten in this overlong story. The Doomsday Weapon is a nice idea, but as I said, many plot holes surround it. Perhaps the reason this story doesn't seem as strong as it might is because it's set after what is Pertwee's second greatest story of all time, The Claws of Axos. I agree with great praise for The Claws of Axos, obviously. If you want to really enjoy this story for its good aspects, I recommend the novelization. Fascinating. We'll close it here. Thanks again, everyone.